Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3961. Today's date is March 24, 2026. It's been almost like a night at 10:32 p.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Okay, so question is, how am I ensuring the wait? Where was it? Okay, yeah. So okay, the question is, how am I ensuring that literacy and numeracy reform do not crowd out higher order thinking, creativity, problem solving, collaboration, and ethical reasoning? Oh my god. This question is a way much difficult. Like, I don't know, but like, since this question kind of like asking to myself, like, it kind of like look like, oh my god, the sound question is kind of like a way much difficult, like literally just like that na, ki if you wanted to like there is one thing I realized that na, ki uh, the value of anything is increased by having less. What do you mean by that? Okay, so basically this is, if kind of like a question is kind of like asked very simple, like when someone asks you question in very simple language, the value of that question is kind of like a very little less. Why? Because of that ki it is a, I understand, right, about the question. But when someone asks question, same question in a very difficult language, then the value of that question is a far more difficult, or far more like a higher. Why? Because we do not understand the question. Like basically, like, do you understand this context? Okay, like basically this thing that na, ki we often take comedian as a not that much seriously, but we often take kind of like a very seriously to such a people who are kind of like a being very serious. Yeah, like it's a very stupid thing. And also is this thing na, being comedian is a kind of like a way much difficult to do it, and being serious is kind of like a way less difficult, probably. I don't know. Yeah, but this is kind of like a mix of whatever. Okay, so what exactly is this question, and why am I asking this question to myself? Okay, this is this is Indian education system. Okay, question. Okay, yeah. And why am I asking this question? Why am I asking this question to myself? I wanted to be uh, education minister of India someday. Okay, yeah. Someday means like after like a 10-20 year. Okay, yeah. So before I want to become that particular person, I wanted to make sure that when I became that particular person, what do I supposed to do? What like my ideas are really good. Like basically what exactly I wanted. If I wanted to change Indian education system or do any kind of like reforms, how do I supposed to do that? What is my execution style? What is my protocol? What is my guideline? What is my aim, goal? What is actually that I want? What is actually change that I'm kind of like expecting, and that change will gonna implement or not? I wanted to understand also to myself that key, will I be able to change this thing or not? Asking this question, I would know more about this particular reality. I would know more about my execution, everything, my ideas, and how do I supposed to change that stuff. Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like asking this question to myself. But why? Well, I kind of like mentioned this in multiple times. Indian education system at the moment is very crippled. Yeah, some are kind of like a try to changing that thing, but it's not really working out. Education system is one of the really essential factor. It depends upon how do we supposed to build our country. If the citizen of the country is not really powerful, the country will not gonna become powerful. The strength of the country doesn't come from the weapon that they have or mineral that they have or how much commodity that they have. Strength of the country comes from the people. And obviously education system is a kind of like a make those people stronger. If our education system is crippled, our country is crippled too. So this is what it is. That's why I'm trying to, like, basically I'm not kind of consider myself that ki I would kind of like change everything. No, it's step by step action. Oh yeah. By the way, implementation happened after 20 year. Okay, after 20 year. So yeah. So basically I wanted to ask this question to understand myself regarding about that will I able to do this thing or not. Alright. Now, regarding about the question says that how am I ensuring that literacy and numeracy reform do not crowd out higher order thinking, creativity, problem solving, collaboration, and ethical reasoning? Let me explain this question in simple language. The question says that how is India making sure that children doesn't become just calculator or reading robots, but also grow up to be creative, kind, smart thinkers who can be real world problem solver? Okay. So how do I supposed to make them kind of like a somebody? Okay, the question is actually that how do I supposed to kind of like a somebody make children is a kind of like a something that like a creative thinker, problem solver, creativity, right? Like, yeah, how do I supposed to make those children like that? Okay, so basically this thing that how do I supposed to solve? Okay, so basically this thing na I think that na if I wanted to kind of like simply conclude everything, how, okay, I'm gonna kind of like simplify this question in even more simple language. Okay, how do I supposed to improve the creativity of the student? How do I supposed to be make those student as a problem solver? How do I supposed to be those student are kind of like a collaborator, or they will kind of like solving the problem by collaborating with each other? And how do I supposed to be kind of like make them ethical reasoning or understanding? Okay, start think first, creativity. But before I kind of like give any kind of like answer, let's just kind of like talk about conventional method of education system and how that kind of like a conventional method of education system are kind of like making them a kind of like a somebody calculator or reading robots. Okay, first of all, I'm gonna tell you my experience. Okay, I know a couple of my friends. Some of my friends are kind of like a very really smart, like really, like they are legit smart. Their brain power is just like wow. I really admire those people, their credibility, what they could able to be do. Like basically is this thing, there is one of my friend who kind of like solve derivative problem soon as he looked at and he just got the answer. Like he doesn't really need steps. He just do all those thing mathematics problem in just in his head and he get the answer. This is the answer. I was like, boy, like when I try to solve any derivative problems, I need my book, pen, and kind of like a step by step, and then I will kind of like solve the problem. And most of the problem are kind of like simply wrong. But this particular person is like, oh my god, boy, what a smart guy! Like amazing. And I encountered with a lot of people who are really, really, really smart, really, really smart. Okay, now what exactly happened? They got a job. They kind of like assembly went into the government exam. They kind of like put a lot of effort to crack government exam. They crack it. Some of the people are became bank PO or government officers and things and that and that. And when I met them, I already admire his skills and credibility and things and that and that. I already kind of like understand that how much effort that they put to achieve that exam and things and that and that. But when I seen them right now, they are earning money. They are earning money very good. They have kind of like a really good job, earning lot of amount of money. Okay, but their mind is crippled. I don't know why, but yeah, like have you ever encountered that? Like basically the people who are kind of like a very smart, since they became older means like, I don't know, after they crossed, like after they got a job, they just became stupid. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I don't know. Like basically is this thing, is your brain is not working or what exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah. And that is not, by the way, like this legit people are really smart. They are still smart, but they are still not using their brain. Like I'm not kind of like somebody telling them stupid or things. I just kind of like get that. And you also kind of like get that thing. Like have you ever kind of like feel like that na ki after they got a job or anyone got a job, they just don't use anything at all. They just, that's it. They just think that ki that's it, stable, fine, I am settled now. I don't have to kind of like go somewhere else and kind of like find and things and that. No, nothing really at all. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Okay, yeah. So what exactly is this thing? Why is actually happening? So our entire education system is kind of like a base on one thing. And what is that thing? Money. Yeah, literally. Ask anyone, why do you want to go to the school? To get a job. Okay, why do you want, sorry, basically ask anyone, why do you want to go to the school? They will gonna say, go to the college. Okay, why do you want to go to the college? To get a job. Why do you want to go and do a job? To get money. Right? So basically, this thing, their answer is indirectly towards the money. That's it. Yeah. Like basically this thing, they don't really have any kind of like something that key. They are going to the school for understanding about the Einstein relativity theory. They are going to the school for understanding regarding about Newton's law. They are going to the school so that they would understand regarding about differential equation. They are going to the school so that they would understand the kind of like assembly Earth magnetic sphere. They are going to the school so that they would understand the kind of like IC engine works. They don't really have that answer. They have an answer regarding about this stupid stuff. They wanted to go to the college, they wanted to do a job, and they wanted to earn money, and that's okay. And that is very wrong thing. Okay, I don't really think that our education system or any educational system is kind of like a like that. Like okay, let me kind of like somebody give you another understanding. Okay, most of the innovation is actually happened before 1900. Like basically is this thing that key like 1900, like basically like 19, like okay, before the kind of like industrial revolution. Okay, have you ever noticed that like after the industrial revolution there is a lot of innovation actually happened? That is true. Okay, as it compared to, but if I'm saying is this not the groundbreaking innovation is actually happened before the kind of like assembly, before this industrial revolution and things and that and that. Now why is that? Because of that before that most of the kind of like people are kind of like getting education for kind of like getting the knowledge and things and that and that. The algebra discovery, the Newton's laws, Einstein actually kind of like discovered theory in 1914 somehow, but also yeah, but kind of like most of the innovation, Leonardo things, most of the innovation are actually happened before the industrial revolution. After the industrial revolution, kind of like assembly is this thing that ki education attached with the money, and since then it kind of like became rabbit hole. I'm not saying that ki after industrial revolution innovation not have actually happened. Innovation happened, like we actually seen the world which is kind of like a much more better and things and that, but these are not innovation, these are upgradation. What do you mean? Okay, so basically is this thing, almost like a 200 year ago we have a car we also have car too. Okay, yeah, this is upgraded version of car, right? Like okay, like basically the groundbreaking innovation, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, someone kind of like a think very wildly, like a kind of like a thing that ki very like a unique, like having those innovation are very less. Okay, maybe I'm kind of like completely wrong in this point of perspective, but this is what I kind of like simply realize that ki like basically is this thing na ki since we industrial revolution happened, we realized that ki we need a kind of like a something, the people who need to work on our factory, and also they need little bit of literate regarding about what they will gonna kind of like assembly read and write and things and that. Since then kind of like assembly education are associated with the money, like since you have education means you are get a job, then you get a job, then you get a money and things and that. It started in Europe, and since then it kind of like a spread all across the world and things and that. Okay, so I think that na ki probably is this thing na ki in today's world education system are just associated with the money. Another thing is that ki how do we supposed to be find the credible person? Exam. In all around the world we have test, unit test, exams, marks, things and that. And this is also add even more kind of like assembly crippled. Why? Because of that ki money is a kind of like a long shot, like basically you will gonna get money from the education after like a couple of year, but marks is a kind of like a thing that you have to get. So basically is this thing na ki every person is kind of like simply learning something for marks, like they just want 100 out of this much mark, or I want this grade or that grade or that grade. When it actually happened, then became is that na, education is kind of like simply became just a thing that ki we just have to know and that's it. We don't have to kind of like implement, or we don't have to imagine, or we don't have to do anything at all. And this is what kind of like simply happened in our education system. Now I am not talk about the rest of the country like a US, Europe. They are kind of like countries are kind of like a much more matured enough. They kind of like a build such a system that kind of like a simply making their education bit more better and kind of like a lot of things. Okay, yeah. But I'm belong to the India, and India is a kind of like a simply very not so good regarding about education. Not so good. Like basically is this thing na marks and things. Okay, but regarding about infrastructure, school, basic education, literacy, these are also not really possible in India. It's not really that ki like people are not really educated here. People are educated, but it's just like that na ki they don't really get the proper quality of education and things and that. And if you want to get quality education, you have to go to the private school, which costs them a lot, like literally just exploitation in private schools. So basically this is what kind of like assembly our at least like Indian education system are kind of like a bit more crippled. There are kind of like assembly policies actually came to kind of like assembly making sure that ki students should supposed to be think wisely and things and that. But the main crux of this Indian education system is a one thing: we have to detach education from money. When we detach education from money, then improvement will gonna happen. Then student learn from their point of perspective. They will gonna learn from the things that they want. Okay, yeah. Like since then implementation actually happened. Like since the innovation actually happened, when we kind of like a detach education from money. But like a doing it, like how do we supposed to do that? How do we supposed to detach money from education? Like basically money is essential, education is really essential too. Okay, yeah. And we shouldn't supposed to detach, right? Yeah, we could. I have a kind of like some idea and things and that. Okay, yeah. But this is a kind of like a problem. Okay, yeah. Now how do we supposed to solve that problem? Now I have a problem. I have a kind of like a some solution. I think, I'm not really sure, but I think a Gurukul program. Okay, yeah. Now what is actually Gurukul program? A Gurukul program is a kind of like a thing that ki usually is this thing. every student are enrolled in this Gurukul program. It's not a kind of like assembly, a kind of like assembly, like a very crazy thing. No, it's not. It's just an application. That's it. It's just an application. It's a kind of like an application where kind of like a every student will kind of like simply spend 1 hour, half an hour into that application. They will do their kind of like study over that application. That's it. That's the solution for every problem. Like, are you stupid? Like one single app, does it kind of like actually change our entire education system? Well, one single app can change entire revolution. And I don't have to kind of like tell you everything. Instagram, YouTube, social media. Like these are kind of like apps are actually available which are kind of like changing billions of people's of life. Not just one country, every country on all around the planet. So one app can change everything. Okay, yeah, but how does actually happen? Okay, yeah, so let me kind of like give you context. So basically, this thing, my Gurukul program is only one thing, that is the application, and people would kind of like a student will kind of like simply enroll in that application, and they would kind of like solve everything, like do the homeworks and things and that and that. The only rule that you have is that be consistent, do not take a gap and things and that and that. Okay, and another thing, in my Gurukul program there is no exam at all. No, there is no exam, there is no unit test, nothing really at all. Why? Because conventional method of education system are focused on impact, like how much kind of like impact on your knowledge, and that impact means exam. That's why most of people are kind of like get stressed in the exam, because they are putting a lot of effort for providing that much impact. But that is not really good. Growth doesn't really come from impact. It's a kind of like a thing that ki you are kind of like simply riding a bicycle. Okay, yeah. And if you think that ki you're kind of like push too much effort, like okay, not just bicycle, take a run. Okay, running would be really good. Let's just say that ki exam means sprint. You are kind of like sprinting very higher speed. You might cover a very long length, but after some sort of time you might get tired and you want to kind of like slow down at some certain point. Most of people are actually stop, and that most of the stopping scene actually happen when they get a job. They will not improve themselves. But my application is not like, basically I believe in consistent. Is this thing, if I eliminate that impactful thing, that exam and things and that, just every person just need to jog. That's it. Just a jog. Every single day they just have to kind of like open this application, do their homework and things and that. Okay. Be consistent every single day for rest of the lifetime. Yeah, for rest of the lifetime. So they will continuously running. Okay, yeah. So do you understand? Like so basically how much it kind of like a thing it will gonna happen. So do you like basically do you want that ki your education does not end? Like basically student will kind of like continue exam, continue doing education till the rest of the lifetime. Yes, because education does not stop. Education is not meant to be finished. It meant to be continued. It meant to be throughout the entire life. Okay. So what do you want? Like basically is this thing that till all the kind of like some student or all the people should supposed to be come to the school every single day throughout the entire lifetime? No, not. Okay. Like basically is this thing school, there is no school at all. In my Gurukul program, there is no school. Okay, people will like basically this thing I'm kind of like thinking about after the 5th standard, means till the age 10. Okay, yeah. Since the children get age 10, they will get into the Gurukul. Now Gurukul is a place. Okay, Gurukul app is an application. Okay, yeah. This is another thing, and this is a Gurukul place. A Gurukul place where a kind of like assembly have a multiple things. A school, hostel, boys hostel, girls hostel, mess, a kind of like assembly medical faculty, or kind of like auditorium, lot of things. Okay, and in this kind of like a Gurukul, almost like 1,000-2,000 kind of like students are actually inside that Gurukul program. Now, so inside that Gurukul, they have a kind of like a tablet they kind of like somebody use their tablet in the app. They have to kind of like do their kind of like somebody daily thing, do homework and things and that. Okay, yeah, that's it. And for rest of the time they will kind of like spend time on Gurukul, and I will kind of like control their time regarding about that key, like their sports and things and that. Also in my Gurukul no one will gonna go home. Like I in the weekend a student might gonna go home, but I wanted that I wanted to utilize their entire time, so that I will gonna teach them kind of like assembly another education. What is another education? Personal development, sex education, financial education, kind of like assembly is this thing that key, sports, exercise. Okay, these are kind of like a very much essential, so that I would kind of like a train them that what will gonna face in their future things and that. Okay, yeah. So if I do this thing, I would kind of like I would make them kind of like a better citizen for the India. Okay, yeah, throughout this thing. Now regarding about I just said that key, I have to be kind of like actually make sure education will not gonna stop and people will continue doing this thing. But how is actually happened? Okay, so basically is this thing now, as I mentioned, my application student will do homework every single day. When they do homework they will kind of like get the score. Okay, get that score. If they continue doing their homework every single day, okay, yeah, their score will increase. Okay, yeah. Now basically is this thing that scoreboard is kind of like a publicly available for everybody, for students, for student, parents, for every, like as also kind of like assembly every job recruiter and things and that. Okay, yeah. So basically what is actually happened that a job recruiter wanted to kind of like assembly recruit a kind of like assembly student regarding about such a student who are really good at mathematics. They will see the scoreboard, they will see these are kind of like a 10 people who are kind of like a really good at mathematics. Okay, because they are kind of like a putting every single day consistent effort, so they are kind of like a seeing those scoreboard, and now recruiter will gonna hire them, right? That's it, simple story. But what if the some student are not really good, like not really kind of like assembly really not really good, they are not in the top tier and things and that, will they recruited? Yeah, definitely. Because let me tell you one thing now, is this thing that the top tier kind of like a people are always getting recruited by some certain company. There are so many kind of like companies are available too. Okay, yeah. And also another thing is that na, let's just say that a scoreboard is kind of like a showing you such a student which are kind of like a from maybe Kerala or maybe kind of like a Tamil Nadu or things and that. But you are the recruiter from New Delhi, so you need a kind of like some student who are kind of like from the Delhi for really good in mathematics. So select that thing that ki I need a kind of like somebody 10 student who are really good in a kind of like a mathematics in New Delhi. Okay, yeah. The app will the profile will kind of like show you these are kind of like a couple of people who are kind of like really good at mathematics, which are also staying in Delhi too. So talk to them. Okay, yeah. Get them a job and things and that. Okay, yeah. And if they continue doing this thing, if those kind of like a student, like basically that Gurukul program will kind of like a till the age of almost like a 18 or 20. Okay, and then after that, before that they will kind of like a get some sort of job and things like that. I'm not really sure at the moment, okay, regarding about college, because I wanted that key a college program should supposed to be enrolled with the Gurukul program. Okay, yeah. This is a thing that I am kind of like a bit more confused regarding about that I don't know about this thing, because I wanted that a Gurukul program should supposed to be control people, sorry, Gurukul program should supposed to control their entire lifetime regarding about what they will gonna do and things and that. So, and as also is this thing na ki as also kind of like some college and university protocol should supposed to align with the Gurukul program. Okay, yeah, like basically Gurukul program, whatever it gonna say, university and college people will kind of like understand and things and that. But okay, why it's completely wrong, right? Wait, let me do a susu. Okay, I have to go to susu first. Wait, let me pause here. Oh boy, right now feeling really good. Okay, yeah. So what was I kind of like a saying? Okay, I was kind of like a saying that ki why does kind of like a simply that ki college and university will kind of like a simply like why do you wanted that ki Gurukul should supposed to be control them, university and college? I'm gonna kind of like simply give you like basically this thing simple explanation, okay, so that you might understand. Okay, so have you ever kind of like a noticed something inside of you that sometime you watch such a YouTube video that is completely unrelated to you, but still you watch? Okay, you still not really understand. I'm gonna tell you my cause is actually happen. Okay, yeah. I like engineering. I like science. I love watching science videos, and I always think that history is a very boring thing. Why do I supposed to be learn about histories and things and that and that? But when I like since I kind of like simply started consuming history, I love history. I getting more information from history. Like basically is this thing I'm kind of like simply watching some sort of lecture about World War II. Okay, yeah. Have you ever kind of like experienced that thing? Sometime your mind like such thing that you might think you hate, but you love it. Have you ever noticed that thing? Okay, like I was the kind of like a particular person who think that ki geography and histories and economics are not really that good. But right now, I consume lectures regarding about history. Economics are very essential concept, a very essential kind of like a subject. I was think that it's a very true thing. Like I like basically I'm kind of like a something like kind of like consider myself very proud that I took a science. Like basically this thing na, after you 10th standard in engineering in India, we have kind of like a choose a stream, science, commerce and arts and things and that and that. Science represent as a elite, commerce represent in between, arts represent it's a kind of like some very stupid people and things and that and that. But dude, the social science are very essential. Social science means history, geography, civic science. Okay, economics are very essential. I didn't really consider them is a kind of like a very like I was kind of like thinking that it's a very stupid subject. Why do we supposed to learn this thing and that and that? But right now I am consuming those information, lectures and things and that. And I am not the only one. You are do too. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing na ki our human mind is not the kind of like a thing that we understand. Sometimes we hate some sort of information knowledge, but after some sort of time we liking that subject. Have you ever noticed that thing? And this is the kind of like some sort of stuff. Like basically this thing now, let's just say a particular person who wanted that he wanted to go to the engineering. Okay, because he has interest, he loves science and things and that and that and that. Okay, now in between he loves history or geography or biology. Like like literally just I seen like a people who are kind of like somebody going to the engineering college and they are kind of like somebody thinking about that, like they are talking about biology and things and that and that. Like our brain is kind of like somebody wired. So what he supposed to be do? Should he drop engineering and go to the medical college? Right? Right? Like if that particular person does that thing, people might consider us stupid. Right? So basically this thing na ki we cannot change our college, right? But we can. Why we should supposed to be have this college? Why do we supposed to be have university? Why do we have this graduation and standards and school? Like literally just like that na ki I ask question to myself, if the knowledge is a kind of like a universal thing that if we wanted to know we just get things, why do we supposed to kind of like give some sort of designation regarding about school, college, university, like a bachelorate, graduate and whatnot. But it doesn't really make sense at all, because our mind is not think like that way. Our mind is always want to consume information regarding about such a thing that we just don't know about that. And that is true. That is so much true. Like basically this thing, have you ever these are I'm not the only one who experienced this thing. and you also experience this thing too, right? So this is, I want that key. If the colleges actually exists, then how do I supposed to kind of like some students should supposed to be change their kind of like some studies and things and that. If the student like a kind of like a particular biology thing, but that particular person is actually from engineering, does he drop that biology or does he not do this thing? Like swapping the college is a bit more difficult, but what if in their application, like in the apps, you just kind of like a change one tab and you will kind of like a learn about biology, and that's it. You just started learning biology, you getting score about the biology too. Okay, yeah, when you get that score, obviously someone recruiter find that okay, this particular person kind of like a love biology because he did that lot of homework throughout this particular year and things and that. You get a job, and after you get a job, you still continue doing this thing, you still improve your score. After you improve your score, other kind of like a big company might gonna say, okay, this particular person has a kind of like a really good score in this particular thing, but this particular person is kind of like a working on that company. So you have a choice that either you work on this company or go to the big company, because big company kind of like give you bigger salary. So basically is this thing na ki, let me tell you one thing, that na ki this app will kind of like simply focus you to grow more, and when you grow more, you actually earn more too. Like basically I am not kind of like a detaching money from education. I wanted to align with properly with kind of like some stuff that we want to learn, and we just get that money. That is the stuff that I want. So this is what I want. Okay, yeah, that's why I'm kind of like thinking that na ki college and university things and that. Like right now, I am not kind of like somebody saying this thing, these are not really essential and I will gonna drop this thing. I will gonna say Gurukul program will control everything and that's it. Now go fuck them all and things and that. No, I will not gonna say. I'm trying to integrate those things. I want to integrate college plus universities and things and that, so that all those things are nurtured together, nurture children's to kind of like make them better person. They will have complete freedom regarding about what they wanted to learn, not just kind of like a focus on we have a engineering college so we just have to focus on just engineering. No, it's not. So this is the stuff that I want. Okay, yeah. So that's why I'm kind of like thinking that Gurukul should supposed to be control all those kind of like a university, college and things like that. So that kind of like a student will kind of like get the entire information regarding about what they want and things and that. And also Gurukul is actually focused on finding expert, like basically is this thing that key expertise, like if the one particular student is kind of like a really expert in kind of like a one thing and that Gurukul try to kind of like compliment them, find that expertise, because every person is kind of like really expert in one thing. Okay, yeah. Like our mind is very much fragile. Sometimes we think that I am really expert in one thing, but we not. We are kind of like only expert in some another thing. That is a kind of like a thing. It's a kind of like a thing that na ki like a basically is this thing na ki our mind is a kind of like something so like we just don't really understand our mind. Like we might think that we understand, but we does not. Okay, yeah. Like okay, let me kind of like give you another example so that you might understand even more better. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna example I give you name a Bollywood actor named Sonu Sood. Sonu Sood is a kind of like a Bollywood actor. Okay, yeah. He do lot of struggle in Bollywood acting and things and that, and he became an actor. He is kind of like somebody do lot of kind of like somebody very heavy role in Bollywood acting and things and that. But after he became actor, he kind of like did something one thing. Okay, yeah. When COVID actually happened, he kind of like somebody transport almost like thousands of workers to their home and things and that, because in the COVID there is a kind of like a transportation was stopped, everything was stopped, and those workers are kind of like a trap in their city. So basically Sonu Sood is a kind of like a somebody that he finance everything, kind of like a somebody take them to their home by kind of like a somebody they arrange the travels and things and that. They also, and basically Sonu Sood kind of like a somebody provide them food and things and that. Okay, yeah. He's the one who kind of like somebody send all those kind of like a worker almost like a 10-20,000 worker he kind of like a sent at his home when COVID actually happened. Okay, yeah. Why does he does that? Why does he does that? Like basically this thing, the journalist ask him question that ki you are actor, like basically this thing, the social work is like, does actor kind of like do social work is kind of like simply good? Yeah, it's some certain point a kind of like actor kind of like doing a charity event. Okay, yeah, that's it. But kind of like a simply is this thing that ki a kind of like a actor who kind of like a simply like a single-handedly kind of like a control everything and kind of like a simply do social work to add kind of like a really positive influence to the society and things and that and that. That's the kind of like a really required lot of courage and things and that and that. Sonu Sood does that thing. And when the reporter say, he says that ki I became Bombay to become an actor. Like basically he come to the Bombay for became an actor. But since he became an actor, he realized that he wanted to do something different in his life. And this is what it is. Sometimes na, we just don't know what we wanted to become. Yeah, like literally that is true. Like a society kind of like a tell us that you have to become a doctor and things and that. And yeah, I became a doctor. Yeah, I kind of like a good score. I became a doctor. But I also like acting too. Right? So this is what it is. Like let me tell you one thing na, ki we are not really kind of like a somebody is this thing that ki we don't know what we are. Like basically I am filmmaker. Okay, yeah, like literally is this thing na, I wanted to be a filmmaker and things and that and that. But since I'm kind of like asking this question to myself, will I become filmmaker or kind of like suddenly a minister of education minister? I am not really sure. Okay, yeah, because I love filmmaking. I do have idea. I definitely gonna make a kind of like a my movie, Gharchi Goshta and Binary Code. These are the movie I will definitely gonna make. Okay, yeah, so that I will not gonna become education minister or what? Like this is kind of like a things. Our mind is just not like a not kind of like a things not settle. Okay, yeah, like our society kind of like a let us that tell us that ki, okay, you became that, just do it, stick with that job, that's it. But no, our mind is just not settle. Okay, these are kind of like a societal implementation that kind of like a they tell us that ki just stop, be settle and things and that. Just don't stop. My Gurukul program is actually act like that way. Okay, yeah. A Gurukul program is kind of my Gurukul application is kind of like a built on that. You just have to be kind of like a somebody do your homework. My system understand everything that what do you like, what kind of like a somebody the problem that you love to solve and things and that. It throws a lot of kind of like a somebody problem in a kind of like a something such a way that you love understanding things. So this is the kind of like somebody that I want. Okay, if you are became a doctor, you are kind of like a wanted to learn about kind of like a somebody, let's just say economics and things and that. Just keep solving economics thing in my application, score will gonna increase somehow, and you might realize that ki, okay, I might have kind of like a little bit opinion or kind of like a knowledge regarding about economics after I became a doctor. Yeah, that is also true. So this is what it is. Okay, yeah. Education does not stop. It continue throughout the lifetime. Our mind is not meant for kind of like a stopping. And my education system is not meant for stop. Even after you graduate from the Gurukul, like basically I'm thinking that like after you graduate from the Gurukul, you will still continue your life, still continue your this thing. Because in the end, it will kind of like add so much amount of value and things and that. So this is my entire program. Yeah, I kind of like mentioned very vividly, but I still not really talk about the kind of like assembly, the kind of like assembly, the question. Okay, the question was that, wait, question means like basically is this thing, how do I supposed to kind of like increase the creativity of the students? Okay, yeah. Okay, creativity. Okay, so in my Gurukul program, how do I kind of like implement creativity? Okay, yeah. Creativity is actually came from people who kind of like let them create something. Okay, yeah. How does Gurukul program is kind of like help them to create something? Okay, yeah. Okay, basically this thing, a Gurukul program is kind of like somebody try to find a particular thing regarding about the person. Creativity. Okay, yeah. Now creativity is a kind of like somebody very unique and very ununderstandable concept. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing na ki we don't know are we creator or not, or we don't know. Like basically creating means like that create such thing that does not exist, right? Yeah. So basically this thing I design my UI, or sorry, I design my kind of like interface in a such a way to kind of like slowly find out a kind of like creative people. But how does I kind of like slowly found that a kind of like creative people? Okay, yeah. um let's take a kind of like a simple example. Okay, yeah. You are the kind of like a particular person who solve mathematics problem very easily and very like a very fast. Okay, yeah. Like soon as the kind of like equation come in front of you, you just solve it. You kind of like did it in your imagination. Yeah, literally, and you just kind of like get the value of x. Okay, you if you are that kind of like a particular person, you are kind of like somebody have a kind of like a much more kind of like a somebody kind of like a somebody regarding about creativity. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Okay, because of if you are kind of like solving this question without kind of like a touching your keyboard or without touching your kind of like a pen, and you just kind of like doing it this thing, that means kind of like you are really smart and you are kind of like know about that skill much more better. Okay, yeah. Now because of this thing, okay, yeah, then system understand that key, okay, you are kind of like a really good. Okay, yeah. So system means my Gurukul application will kind of like somebody understand that key, okay, you are legit. But my Gurukul algorithm want to understand that key, are you legit or not? So basically is this thing, it kind of like a showcase such a unique equation in front of you, that key, do you solve this thing, which is kind of like a little bit difficult, and try to push it that key, is that particular person are really credible or not? If that particular person really credible and he solved that thing, then what is actually is this thing, that particular person's score is actually much more increased. Another thing is that key, because of this particular person solve the mathematical equation on his head, so basically is this thing, this particular person try to kind of like simply make sure that how that particular mathematical equation will kind of like implement in real life. Means what? Example is this thing, let's just say a kind of like a mathematical equation regarding about the circle or pi r square, or like a basically is this thing, I don't know right now, I don't really have any kind of like information. Mathematics is a kind of like some language that we just kind of like visualize as a number. But mathematics is not the language of number. No, mathematics is a language of kind of like geometry. Yeah, like this is what is it. Okay, yeah. Now if that particular person solving the mathematics problem very easily, very widely, that means that particular person kind of like somebody kind of like understand geometry much more better. Okay, yeah, because obviously is this thing, mathematics is kind of like a somewhat something kind of like a represent as a geometry regarding about that shapes and size and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing if that particular person solve mathematics problem much more widely, so basically is this thing, my application will kind of like throw them little bit of geometrical numerical. Okay, yeah. If that particular person solves geometrical numerical, kind of like let them kind of like explain that geometrical numerical regarding about this and that and that and that. So if that particular person kind of like understand that geometrical numerical, he would understand that ki, okay, might be if we kind of like somebody find or create this shape, then probably we could kind of like somebody go into the space much more speed of lighter and things and that. Or what if we could use this kind of like a material, might be which will kind of like somebody heat resistance and things and that, which would kind of like somebody resist to kind of like a lot of amount of space, lot of amount of heat in the space and things and that. Like basically this thing ki this is a kind of like a new level, that ki my app will understand this particular person is actually really good at mathematics. So let's just kind of like give them such a question that applied on real life, a geometry or biology or metallurgy or things and that, so that that particular person try to solve that particular problem by mathematical expertise that they have, and try to implement this thing, so that he will kind of like create something new equation, new problem, or new problem solver, or new method, or create something new. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? it kind of like a push little bit of creativity. Most of people kind of like a think that creativity means like that content creator, influencer. No, these are kind of like, okay, these are also creator too. Okay, but still is this thing now. I want that students should also think like that. Like basically is this thing now. Let me kind of like tell you, when Einstein think, how have you ever noticed that how does Einstein kind of like somebody invent the general relativity theory? He kind of like a think that what if he became a kind of like a light photon, kind of like a travel through speed of light, and he imagine that how does the world, how does kind of like a world he would gonna see from his point of perspective, that he became a kind of like a photon particle could kind of like somebody going to the speed of light and things and that and that. So when he try to imagine, when he see from that imagination point of perspective, how the gravity will gonna influence, how the gravity lensing will gonna happen, how this happened, that happened, that happened, that happened, imagination and things and that and that. This is a kind of like a thing that I want. I want that my students should supposed to be kind of like a somebody, let them imagine. Okay, but these are kind of like a very higher level. Okay, observation and imagination is kind of like a much more higher level. Okay, at the beginning I'm kind of like making sure that students should suppose to kind of like a teach regarding about this and that and that. If they are kind of like really expert in one sort of kind of like some subjects and things and that, my algorithm try to kind of like let them understand that key, if that particular person really good at that, so let's just kind of like give them imagination question, let them kind of like imagine things and that. So this is what it is. That's why kind of like somebody, I will try to push them, add a little bit of creativity inside of their mind, so that they would kind of like create more, think more. Like basically my application will kind of like let them, force them to kind of like think more about the kind of like somebody app, think more about the kind of like somebody the problem and things and that and that. That particular person, if he understand this thing, he will kind of like create something new, right? So that is called kind of like creativity. This is kind of like a creativity will implement in my application. Okay, another thing is that problem solving. Problem solving is a kind of like a really essential thing. Problem solving is also really essential. Observation and imagination, same thing happened with the creativity, same thing happened in the problem solving. Observation and imagination, specifically observation is a kind of like a very essential skill in our education system, does not really kind of like tell us. In my program, observation is very much essential. Okay, so how does kind of like observation okay, how kind of like I teach them observation. Now basically this thing, observation and imagination, these are kind of like a concept students supposed to be like basically I would try to teach those concepts in app, but it's very difficult to teach. Why? Because it really required a kind of like simply a presence of human. As a teacher would kind of like teach those subjects very much wisely. How? Okay, kind of like simply give you something that have you went to mall? Have you ever kind of like find any kind of like a place where you kind of like simply sit? Or no, you haven't really found a place. If like maybe is there, but very less. Why does kind of like a mall doesn't really have any kind of like a chair or things like that? Because they won't let you to sit. Because if you sit, you might not gonna browse, you might not go anywhere. If you're not going anywhere, then you will not gonna buy stuff, right? So they kind of like make sure that you will not gonna sit, you will kind of like always gonna walking in the mall and things and that. They kind of like make sure that you will kind of like a walk. So that's why their temperature are kind of like a very much pleasant, kind of like a feel kind of like a some chilly or kind of like a things. There is a kind of like a flashy lights, there is a lot of banners and things, there are a lot of stuff that you wanted to buy, because malls are kind of like a design in such a way that you supposed to be browse and buy stuff like that. Now this actually happened because of observation. Okay, sometimes we have to be observe things from people around us. Okay, example is this thing that key, let's just say today what is actually happened, me and my friend are kind of like a playing badminton. My friend are actually talking about the kind of like assembly war and stuff like that. Right now Iran, Israel and kind of like America is kind of like doing a war. Okay, things and that. Now because of that key, LPG gases prices are actually increasing in India, oil prices are actually increasing in India. Basically is this thing that no oil is kind of like a so much, yeah. So basically is this thing na ki my friend is kind of like a somebody blaming the political, he was kind of like a blaming that ki because of Narendra Modi this actually happened and things and that and that. I was like, dude, okay, war is actually happening in Middle East. How does kind of like a Narendra Modi would kind of like a somebody responsible for that? Then he was gonna say, no, he is that, he is that, he is that, he is that, he is that. I was like, then I kind of like observe his thought process, and then I realized that the way that he was not talking. Actually, basically what exactly happened now, this is what actually happened when the people who are kind of like consuming information through short form real content and things and that, because of that short form piece of content doesn't really give you the proper information regarding about what exactly this and that. And also is this thing, a short form piece of content I just wanted to entertain you, not to kind of like give you the elaborate information regarding about that. As also short form piece of content are kind of like somebody mainly focus on kind of like somebody kind of like somebody problem, or kind of like somebody that key there is a kind of like a new term. Okay, what is exactly that? Kind of like somebody yelling at each other, or kind of like somebody saying something wrong about the politics and things and that. Okay, those piece of content like a negativity content are kind of like a sell on short form piece of content. And this particular person, my friend, is kind of like consuming so much amount of short form content. And then I realized that that's why he was kind of like talking like that and things and that. He was kind of like a blabbered regarding about all the time regarding about the geopolitics and things and that. He was kind of like saying Narendra Modi this, BJP that is that, that is that, that is that. He just kind of like a non-stop criticizing regarding about his kind of like a party and things and that and that. I was there and I kind of like observing his kind of like a way that he kind of like a stuff. That is called kind of like observation. You have to be kind of like a learn from your surrounding and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. Like basically it's not meant to be kind of like a give any kind of a judgmental thing, but try to understand, and that is called observation. Okay, just observe things. Okay, yeah. As also is this thing now. Okay, have you ever kind of like noticed that when the rain is actually happened, everything kind of like look really fresh? Okay, like basically this thing, the plant look kind of like assembly very fresh. The kind of like a soil kind of like look little bit of even more brown. Okay, yeah, the sky look little bit bright blue or things like that. Have you ever kind of like noticed like that? It's kind of like a feel like that na ki, like a basically entire earth is actually showered, right? And that is what exactly true. Like basically is this in the nature kind of like somebody represent very true color in the rainy season probably. Like after the rain, like basically when the rain actually happened and then sunlight is actually happened, it kind of like somebody feel like that ki everything is kind of like became saturated. Okay, yeah. So color saturation is kind of like increase and things and that and that. Have you ever noticed that thing? Okay, so like this is what it is. That is called kind of like an observation. Okay, these are observation are kind of like taught by the teacher, because teacher are kind of like a bit more better way to kind of like explain this kind of like things. Now I wanted that teacher as a student should supposed to observe things regarding about everything. If your parents are actually fighting to each other, try to observe them. Why are they fighting and things and that. Don't interrogate or don't ask. Just look from very safe distance and just see the stuff, and you kind of like see very beautiful thing. Like basically this thing, if you have a dog, just stare them a dog. That's it. Just stare them, and kind of like you understand that this dog is kind of like very stupid. He might kind of like look really cute while doing stupid stuff, but yeah, okay. And probably this thing also you might understand okay, why he is kind of like scratching his ear all the time, why he kind of like somebody just doing his kind of like a nose thing and that. Okay, yeah. Observe that thing plus knowledge you could imagine. Okay, when you kind of like have this observation and knowledge, you could imagine things. Like basically this thing, why does dog is kind of like always kind of like cleaning his nose or things and that. Why? Because of that nose is kind of like much more stronger and things and that. There is something might be happened, that's why kind of like he's kind of like doing his nose thing or that and that. Also, have you ever noticed that his ears is kind of like a rotated almost like a 180? Yeah, from this to this to this to this. Okay, yeah, this is kind of like a very unusual thing. Okay, yeah. As also is this thing how the kind of like a body walks, like like a dog walk, like their body weight distribution regarding about 2 legs and 2 hands are kind of like distributed very equally. So that's why they could kind of like run more faster with very longer period of time. So this is called observation for knowledge and education. When you have that thing, you just mind-boggling, dude. Okay, yeah, literally just like that, na, the entire world is actually filled with those things. So that is called kind of like a some lazy thing that the problem solver. It comes from the observation, and when you have knowledge, you could kind of like solve so many problems. Okay, yeah. And another thing is that collaboration. Okay, yeah. Obviously, teamwork is very much essential regarding about every problem that it has. Okay, yeah. I am not really sure about the collaboration. How do I supposed to be execute this particular stuff? But I wanted to implement that thing. I wanted that key a kind of like a group project, or people should supposed to be kind of like a implement something together so that they would kind of like a find much more better and things like that. By the way, in the collaborator, okay, in the collaboration point of perspective, my Gurukul program, specifically my Gurukul, okay, yeah, is a kind of like a some very big collaboration thing. Means like that, as I mentioned, in my Gurukul, student will kind of like a come together, live together, stay together, learn together. Okay, yeah, they will not gonna go home. They will kind of like interact with each other, and they will kind of like learn more with each other and things and that and that. They will play sports, they eat together. Yeah, that is what it is. Okay, so basically, this thing also I want that na ki have a relationship, like a basically love relationship is very much essential. Okay, yeah, these are also form of the collaboration too. Like basically, when you fall in love and things and that, you kind of like a see the world from different point of perspective, which is also kind of like a form of collaboration too, right? So that is also things. I also allow them to kind of like a fall in love and things and that, do a sex, but with a kind of like a with the consent and things and with the condom. Okay, yeah, like I'm not considered as a kind of like a simply sex is a kind of like a taboo. As also existing my education system is kind of like allow them to kind of like a fall in love. Okay, yeah, very very essential. These are kind of like simply looking at the life from different point of perspective, and that perspective actually came where you kind of like a fall in love and things and that. Okay, another thing, ethical reasoning means deciding what is actually right and wrong. Okay, so deciding about ethical is a kind of like a very much I'm not really sure about that. Okay, I obviously I'm kind of like a telling them this is right, this is wrong, this is right and this is wrong. But who am I supposed to be kind of like a telling them which is actually right and which is actually wrong? Okay, because throughout my entire period of lifetime, I realized that, oh my god, like literally my mouth is kind of like a really tired to talk right now. I'm kind of like a talking. Okay, whatever. I'm just kind of like a quickly, and it's been almost like a 1 hour. I'm gonna end quickly. Okay, yeah. So ethical means like that. What is actually right and what is actually wrong? Who am I supposed to be kind of like a judge regarding about what is actually right and what is actually wrong? I will not gonna that, na. So basically, I wanted that key students should supposed to be understand that key what is actually right for them and what is actually wrong for them regarding about their knowledge and things and that. Oh my god, I'm really tired. Okay, so this is all the kind of like things that I entirely covered. So I just have to end here. I'm really tired. My mouth is so tired. I just want to shut up. Thank you.